Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Sage 100 Automation webinar series. I'm Mike Fiella, one of your SWK customer account managers, and it is a pleasure to welcome you all today. We've invited Alltech here to show you DocLink. The goal is to show you a more effective way of managing everyday business processes by going digital, eliminating paper, and streamlining your processes. Just a few housekeeping items. All lines will be muted during the presentation. We will record and distribute the webinar to you in a few days for your convenience. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box at the bottom of your GoToWebinar sidebar, and then hit send questions to staff. You can do this at any time during the webinar. Without further ado, our first speaker today is Perry Lynn. Perry Lynn, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it. And today I'm joined by Mark Whitbeck, who is one of our sales engineers, and he's going to be doing the live presentation for you. So let's get started. And Mike, or Mark, if you wouldn't mind, pop to the next slide. So what we're going to be talking about today is really helping your companies transform the organization into going paperless. And how do we do that, right? Today, we live in a world of what we call instant access. So I can be traveling, right, look up on my phone a place to go and eat, review their menu, review all the different comments about that particular restaurant, get directions, etc. Right? And that's all what we expect today, right on our mobile phone and right at our fingertips. Next slide. But that's not what happens in our office, right? Why is it so hard to find anything in our particular offices? And I'll tell you why if we go to the next slide, and I'm going to give you a little poll that you can participate in. So where are you storing documents, right, and why is it so hard to get access to them? So I want you to think about this in your own organizations, and I want you to answer and maybe chat back to Mike if you like and say, okay, how many of you are storing documents in a filing cabinet, right? And probably most of you are, right? It's a very traditional way of storing documents, but there are some inherent problems in doing that. How about those of you that have taken the first step in going paperless and have moved to a network file share? I'd be curious to know how many of you are doing that as well. And this is great because we're already now solving the problem of a filing cabinet, but there are some also inherent issues on this network file share structure. And that is primarily if the links get broken. If the links get broken, then we no longer have access to those documents. So what we're going to be talking about today is the powerful solution called DocLink, and it enables your organization to go entirely paperless. So let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. And I want to cover a little bit more on the kinds of business issues that document management and workflow solves. And here again, you have another opportunity to start questioning yourselves, right, and the business processes that you have internally. All right, so are you faced with storage issues? Many customers are, right? They're using filing cabinets, or they are storing documents on a warehouse floor, or they have rented space in order to store documents. And all of these different storage mechanisms come with a financial equation attached, right? And there's an area of cost savings. Let's talk about business processes. Primarily, companies are coming to us to streamline accounts payable. Why? Because it's always a wash in paper. But I'm going to start showing you some concepts today, and I want you to use those concepts and think very broadly in the organization. Because if I tell you we can put an invoice through an electronic workflow process to give you visibility and control back of that invoice and no longer have to deal with lost invoices or late fees and return the ability to get early pay discounts, right, you'll know that you can also put other kinds of documents through a workflow as well. And that's important because we want to be able to provide an application that you can scale in your organization, right? And all of these different elements that you're seeing here on the screen feed into that concept of reducing costs and increasing productivity, okay? All right, Mark, let's advance to the next slide. So I want to ask each of you 3 simple questions. And if your answer to any of these questions is a yes, then I would really encourage you to reach out to your Sage account manager and potentially set up a call where we can talk about what's happening in your particular unique business. What are you trying to solve? And then we can have a direct conversation about how DocLink can help you do that, right? But here are the questions. Does your current system require a lot of touching, moving, and filing of documents? We're going to cover invoices today, but of course think broadly, right? How about your approval processes? Are they manual? I just got off the phone with someone that is in a complete manual environment, and they also happen to have multiple locations. So they are manually routing documents to their approvers, and we can help solve that. And the last element here is, are you trying to grow as a company? One of the ways to do that is to reduce data entry, right, and give yourselves the ability to do more transactions, right, with the same amount of people. All right, so I'd be curious to know, and you can chat back to Mike if you like, using the chat feature, and just let him know, if any of those really apply. And if they apply, then we'll certainly know that it's time to have a conversation. Well, let me introduce you to DocLink. DocLink is an enterprise-wide solution, and I always think about it in these kind of 4, what I would call functional pillars, right? Number 1, you can capture any kind of document, report, form, or file type. Why? Because you want to make it very, very simple to search and retrieve that document. And the beautiful thing about the search and retrieval function is you can do it in DocLink, in Sage on many of the different windows, also via the web and a mobile device. So that's very compelling in giving each of the team members real agile access to the documents. Let's talk about workflow. We've talked about that a little bit already, but workflow is all about the ability to route documents between employees. Mostly it's for the purposes of approval, but it could be that you want to communicate and tell each other different elements about that particular document. Now, automated delivery talks about setting up a document to be sent outside of the organization mostly. So the easiest way to think about it is sending out your AR invoices out to customers. And the beauty here is that not only can you send out the one primary document, but you can also add supporting documents. So think about an AR invoice going out and attaching a delivery receipt and having that all automated so no one has to touch that paper anymore, right? So it can really represent a significant cost savings. And let's ultimately talk about smart forms. We're going to be going into this in a little bit more detail later on, but this is all about giving you the ability to create a document or create a form. That's a better way of actually describing it. So think about an expense report, right, or a requisition or something of that nature. And we'll go into that in more detail as we move along. All right. So what I'd like to do now is to advance forward in the presentation and start talking about what I call the sizzle of DocLink search and retrieval. And I'm going to cover a couple case studies for you because I want you to understand what the value is to the organization. And then we're going to hop into a little demonstration so you can see it in action. So let's take a look at those case studies. The very first one is all about a Midwest manufacturer. And take a look at that value. $85,000 was spent annually in search and retrieval charges. Now that's significant, and it represents a very large organization. But ask yourselves, how much are you spending in storage and retrieval charges? And think about it, it may not be an off-site storage, right? It may be in the footprint of the filing cabinets that you have in your office, and you need to be able to replace those filing cabinets with employees. It may be that you're storing those documents on a warehouse floor and you now want to put, other items in those places. Right? So that's one example. Let's take a look at another example. All right, 2 million documents being stored in DocLink. So when we start thinking about this, and Mark, actually, if you wouldn't mind, advance to the next slide because I want to bring this concept together for everybody. If we knew, and do one more time, sorry about that, one more time for me, advance forward. Thank you very much. So if we know, right, that it's about $20 to file a document, and about $120 to retrieve a document, and you see the other figure there, right? If that company is actually storing 2 million documents in DocLink, you have to start thinking about, gosh, how much did it take someone to file that document away? How many times was that document retrieved from the system, right? So going to an electronic storage system can be very, very cost effective when you start looking at those hidden costs of managing documents in a manual way, okay? Some companies decide that this is the first step and that this is where they want to focus. But most companies really do look at streamlining the AP automation. But I thought it was important to advise everybody that this is indeed the first step of document management. So let's continue on in the presentation because I want to talk a little bit about search and retrieval, and then we're going to move into the demonstration. So search and retrieval, remember, is all about storing all of the documents in one easy place. And the important thing here is that you do have the ability to search for documents in DocLink, and Mark will show you that, but you also have the ability to view documents in Sage. And there's a huge time savings proposition here in saving time over the manual process that it takes now to compile documents together and to file them away, to retrieve them and to refile, and don't even get me started about what it takes for the audit process, right? And so I'm sure you're very familiar with that. So Mark, I'm thinking this would be a great time to transition into the search and retrieval capabilities of DocLink, and then I'll touch again on a little bit of the ROI. But why don't you give us a demonstration of how easy it is to search for documents in DocLink?
Perfect. Thanks, Berlin. All right, guys. So what we're looking at here is just a virtual machine of DocLink. And for search and retrieval, there is a lot of functionality that we have. I'm just really going to touch upon the surface of our functionality when we come into the advanced inquiry. So this is a replacement of going to your filing cabinet, looking through all the different files, assuming they were sorted correctly, and then pulling those documents out of that filing cabinet. A couple of cool things that we can do. We can save a search. So I can come down to my saved search list, and if I have saved a search from previous, I can go down and find all, let's say, AP documents from 2017. So DocLink then automatically grabs all AP documents. We can filter by entry date, so January 1 to December 31st. Then I can search on different property values as well. So let's just go ahead and search on that. All right, so the next window we see here is our search grid. We're able to see all the document types, AP invoice, purchase orders, so on and so forth that we had searched on. So now we can pull the documents that we want, find them quickly and easily. From here, we can do what we call a drill down search. So let's just, for example, let's take one of these Apple invoices. And let's just say, hey, you know, I'm really interested to see what all invoices are linked to a specific GL code. So what we can do is mouse over that particular value, in this case 5350003 for that GL code. We can actually see all the GL codes linked here. When I click on that, DocLink is going to research the entire database, and it's going to find all the documents, not just invoices, that have a linking value of 5350003. So as you can imagine, this is a really nice way to determine what invoices are being paid to whom. We can determine what GL codes go where. And so we're doing a little bit of business intelligence by simply finding the documents and finding the data within DocLink. All right. So we'll go back to our advanced inquiry. And now we're not just necessarily limited to accounts payable, but that's the low-hanging fruit that we always like to say. We can do enterprise-wide type searches. So AR, sales, checks, purchase requisitions, HR documents, so on and so forth. DocLink is able to find any document as part of your enterprise. All right. And finally, what we'll touch on last before we go back to the presentation is searching directly from Sage. Now, this is one of the main benefits of using DocLink. We have a tight integration with Sage. So if we jumped over to Sage 100, and I'm just going to log in and then click on the receipt of invoice entry screen. You'll notice an extra little button down here called View Docs, and that's an integration button that DocLink adds. We include these in a multitude of different screens. So it's not just a receipt of invoice entry. We have it in receipt of goods, vendor maintenance, invoice data entry. The idea is if you're in Sage and you didn't want to have to go to DocLink, we could find the transactional data by simply clicking that button. So if we go ahead and do that, DocLink is going to pull the invoice based on related data. So in this case, we're looking at this PO number, vendor number, and invoice number. We're going back and finding that document in DocLink and retrieving it or recalling it on the fly. So this saves a ton of time, right? Imagine not having to go to a filing cabinet. You simply click on the transaction and find that document. Okay. So I'm going to pass it back to Perry Lynn.
Oh, thanks, Mark. That is perfect. So I loved what you showed. I also especially loved showing the whole enterprise-wide solution, because even though we may be wanting to talk about AP today, DocLink can be an enterprise-wide solution, and that's part of the beauty of having a scalable solution. If you want to start in a particular department, you can. If you want a full enterprise-wide solution, you can, or you can, of course, phase it in. So let's just kind of hone in on those search and retrieval benefits, and this is perfect, thank you, on the ROI, because time is equal to money, and what you can do as an organization to determine if DocLink or document management is the right thing for you to pursue is to think about the time spent doing each of these different activities: copying documents, filing documents, retrieving documents, matching documents together, and you see a simple calculation here. But what is the benefit, right? The benefit in my mind is having this rich and powerful and flexible search criteria that far surpasses anything that you can do in terms of a network file share or, of course, a traditional filing cabinet. It's easy to use, right? You've got this very simple, intuitive way of getting access to a document, researching it by some kind of transactional value, and then being able to drill around as well. And I think the overall value proposition to an organization is really saving time on the filing, retrieving, reproducing documents, lessening the need to call AP. Hey, I don't remember, seeing this document. Can you send it to me? No, it allows people to have that self-service access. And of course, there's full text search. So that's another way of being able to easily, look for documents in the organization. Okay. So let's continue on and move forward. So we've covered search and retrieval of documents. I now want to move into how we can streamline AP approvals and the entry and even the capture of the payment. So let's take a look at what accounts payable is trying to achieve as an organization. And this is perfect what's on the screen, right? When AP teams come to me, they say, hey, Perry Lynn or PL, I really want you to help me minimize data entry, and our approval process is so laborious and cumbersome. We really need to streamline it because we're getting late fees, or it's taking too much time, and we're actually in a beautiful position of growing as an organization, and now I'm faced, do I hire someone, or do I optimally use technology to help grow the business? Right? And of course, everyone wants something seamlessly integrated to their Sage application as well. So when we talk about the benefits of workflow, it's really going to be about moving documents easily from one person to another and knowing where that document is in the overall process. So next, I'd like to showcase just a couple of our different user case scenarios. And in this particular one, this company is actually based on the East Coast, and they had, even for a $1 value invoice, right, would route it manually via courier, right, to various locations. And it was a big problem for them, and they needed to be able to have an electronic workflow so they could seamlessly move documents through the organization. A big issue was having lost and misplaced documents, so having DocLink in their organization solved that for them. Let's take a look at the next use case, Mark. So this is a company out in Palm Springs, and they have a huge growth initiative in their organization. So look at the stat there, 50% growth, right, without adding additional staff. So by streamlining their business process, they were able to keep up with the transactional volume. So here again, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I want to make sure you're clear on the invitation. If this is something that is plaguing you as an organization, then definitely reach out to SWK, because they can certainly get you in touch with us, and we can talk about, how we can help you individually in the organization, right, take your business to the next level. All right, let's continue forward. Now, I think it's important to cover return on investment, or ROI. And here, I do have a calculator that I could send you. So if you are interested in receiving a return on investment calculator, definitely reach out to SWK, and they can let us know that you're interested in that. But what we want to do here in workflow is take a look at how are you routing documents internally today. How much time is being spent on that effort, right? And is there other ancillary costs, like a courier fee or early pay discounts that you're missing, or late fees that you're incurring? And if we look at that entire financial equation, then we're able to, really help you see what the value to the organization is. Okay. So I think next, what I'd like to do, Mark, is move into the demonstration portion. And just to set that up for you a little bit, what I hear most of my customers doing is the following, right? An invoice comes in via email or hard copy. AP may take a look. They may put a traditional rubber stamp, right? Rubber stamp and ink pad, and then start routing it around the organization for approval. And that routing takes different kinds of flavors. It could be a red hot folder, it could be an interoffice mail, it could be a square box that we're kind of divvying up mail into. And therein lies the problem, because then invoices are getting lost, right? But they finally make their way through the approval process, and they come back to AP. And then AP is looking at that stamp information, and they're reduplicating their effort by vouchering that into the Sage application. So there are a fair amount of issues with that process, right? Redundant data entry. This also has an implication on those reclass entries that you may be doing. And ultimately, there's just no visibility and control of where that invoice is. So Mark, why don't you give a demonstration of showing the power of workflow and what it means to an organization to have that visibility and control, and some of the cool things you can do there.
Perfect. Sounds great. All right. So let's go back to the DocLink Smart Client. This is the portal for everything DocLink, and we're going to click on the Workflow tab. We can see all the workflows we have access to. I'm just going to focus on the AP processing workflow, and we're going to first go to the non-PO invoices. Go ahead and click on Search. What we see here is a list of documents that are ready to be processed. So we've maybe skipped a step, but Perry Lynn alluded to it. There's different ways of bringing documents in. That might be scanning a paper document. That might be a digital document that goes through an email. Maybe we've taken a step forward and gone through an OCR process, so optically reading a document and bringing it into DocLink now. So this is where we start. The first document I'm going to look at here is a non-PO type invoice. And if I double click and open this up as big as we can now see there's a little bit of data related to that invoice that we can see. So on the right-hand side, we can see everything about the invoice and vendor information. Now, ideally, maybe an OCR solution would bring this in for us as part of header data. But the next step I would do is basically mimic the process of coding that document, just like we would rubber stamp a document to then send it on to an approver. So DocLink has that ability to, instead of entering it into Sage 100's invoice data entry screen, we can actually do that directly in DocLink. We use that through a process called the GL Smart Form. And this is part of the Smart Form idea, or basically fillable forms. So everything that we have already indexed onto the document comes forward and syncs with that distribution stamp. And you can see the vendor code Apple, the invoice number, date, and amount have already pulled forward to minimize data entry. We don't have to do duplicate entry, right? What we can also do is add geo lines. So as we're reading the page on here, we see 3 different lines, and I might add 3 different geo codes onto this. But let's ask ourselves, what happens when we have invoices that are common? Maybe we have the same invoice that comes in every single month, maybe a rent, utility, something like that. Well, we can actually save even more time by using what we call a template. I'm just going to go down and choose my Apple template here. And by choosing that, I actually can fill in all the data that I'd want to fill out about that. So GL codes, the names, the amounts, so on and so forth. And I've created a distribution stamp for that. Now, the last step in this process as an AP person is I want to burn that data onto that document. So this is taking the place of that rubber stamp, putting a GL code, or even writing that GL code on there. So I literally click the button that says stamp, and DocLink creates a second page onto that document as an audit trail. So this is telling DocLink when we ultimately import this into Sage to create that, that syncing between the 2 applications, what data has been or what will be pushed over into Sage. Okay. Finally, what I'm going to want to do is send this to an approver. Now, just a quick note here, I am doing all this quote unquote manually, but DocLink can be used to automate this process as well. So let's say we have some automation built in, and I simply send it to a workflow status. DocLink will look at, let's say, invoice amount and route it to the correct approver. So that might be the CFO if we're routing it to invoices that are above 25,000. Maybe they're less than 25, so DocLink would know that and send it to the correct person. All right. But for the example here and just for the demo, I'm going to route it manually. Just like that, we've sent that document off to our CFO. Okay. Now we're going to step back here. We're going to look at the difference between the non-PO and PO invoices and how that might differ. Since we now have a purchase order back in that invoice, DocLink can pull those supporting documents, that backup documentation along with the invoice. So here we see the same workflow. We change the category, but we're now dealing with a different type of invoice. We can see the invoice, purchase order, and all the vendor data here. All right. If we look down below, we can see not only the invoice from up above, but the 2 other documents that relate to this. So PO was created, and it was indexed into DocLink. Basically, it sits and waits there until the goods received come in. So we also see the goods received. Once those come in, we enter those and enter that document as DocLink and wait for the invoice to come in. So we have all 3 of these. We can now click and open all 3 side by side, do we call a visual 3-way match. So now we can see the original purchase order, that package slip, and the invoice all linked together. And if we have a 3-way match, then we can automatically send that document to a PO match status. This is also where we can view and see if maybe we were short shipped or maybe the wrong items were shipped. And we can take care of those issues that arise by viewing that 3-way match here as well. Okay. So since there's really no approval on a 100% match for a PO invoice, we're going to step back and go back to that non-PO invoice. So I'm going to pretend for a second I'm the CFO and I was routed that Apple invoice. Okay, so I'm going to go in and I'm pretending I'm the CFO for a second, and I can come into DocLink. I can see the data that was previously burned on that document through the Sage GL Smart Form, and I can view it as that second page. I can also do other things. I can put sticky notes on that document. So if for some reason I didn't like what I saw, maybe let's say wrong account code, I can add that there. And I can draw attention to where I'm referring to. So I can draw a line down to the code. I can even put a highlighter over that component, and then draw attention to that next person in line that sees it. So I'm not necessarily going to approve this, but I don't want to deny it because we need to pay that invoice. And so we need to send it back to maybe a review status. Okay. What I can also do is add permanent annotations onto the document as well. So if I like what I see instead, I can now put an approve note on here. These are non-changeable annotations. So an approval needs to be something that is permanent, that can't be changed by somebody else. And that's basically what we're doing. We're adding a digital signature onto the document that stays with that document forever. So here we've just added the ability to click the approve note, so we can now send it to the approved status. Same thing goes for a denial status. So I don't like what I see, so I just add a deny note. Or if I wanted to keep the entire page clean, I could add something like this. Please review. Click OK, and we add that note along with the other notes on the side. So since that stays with that document, now future users can see this, and we're also keeping the page clean, right? So we're not having to modify anything about that invoice. We keep it nice and clean, readable, and everything sits off to the side. The last thing I'm going to do is make sure I can actually approve this and send it to the approved status. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and click to the send to approved status. And what happens now is that DocLink is going to read that and it's going to import that data into Sage. And at that point, pretty much the entire process is completed. So all this data, DocLink handles and facilitates the data import from DocLink into Sage. Now we have a syncing between the applications. So when we want to go into Sage and we don't necessarily need to go back into DocLink to search documents, we can do that. And this also prevents us from having to re-enter data into Sage. So we have a digital document we're managing, we click one button, and that imports all the data back into Sage. And just like that, we have the data in two places. We haven't done any extra work, and we're managing that digital document. Okay. And just one thing I kind of skipped over since we were right here, but what happens when one of those approvers does get a document and they need to be able to process it? They might not necessarily know that even exists. And so the idea is that we can add a notification to that user. So if I go ahead and just quickly open my Outlook window here, and we can take a look at what that might look like from an approver standpoint. Okay. So there's a couple options when we are dealing with notifications. Maybe you get a lot of documents coming in that need to be approved, and we can facilitate the notifications in a couple of different ways. So let's say 30, 40 invoices per day, high volume approvers. Maybe they want something like this, where we're showing the document count, we're showing the overdue count and the priority. So we know as an approver what we need to take care of, what can be pushed off later, and what needs to be taken care of now. This is really a daily digest of all the documents that have come into our workflow status. Now, let's say we don't have that many documents, maybe it's a couple per day. What we can actually do is allow the user to approve or deny documents directly from email. If I look here, I can see the invoice that was attached. And if I double click it, I can actually see the image that we saw previously. And if I click down to go to the second page, I can see that distribution stamp that was added. So an approver could literally see everything about that document, so they would know if they can approve or deny that document. So they're showing other document data, if it's priority or not, when it was received, where it came from, and then we can actually approve or deny the document directly from email. These links facilitate that, so I can click the approve button or the deny button, and DocLink is going to take that document and route it to the correct place. So this prevents users from actually having to install anything on their system. They don't need the DocLink Smart Client. And as an approver, if that's the only work you're doing in DocLink, that really makes sense, right? We have other options to do this, so we can modify the notifications to best suit your needs. If you wanted something in between the first option and the second option, we can do that as well. So launching the DocLink workflow, for example, we know we have 5 documents we need to approve. I don't want to have to approve every one by a click, so I can actually go into the DocLink workflow and click them that way. And we can do a combination of that, so approve, deny with a link here as well. So there's lots of different options we can do here. Okay. So finally, going full circle, let's say we've imported the data, we've posted that transaction, and we've cut checks. So we can come back to search and retrieval. We can now, maybe let's say we look at another saved search for invoice and check, and I can search that document, double click, open that document, and we can see the invoice with the check that paid that invoice side by side. So just by a simple couple clicks in a view, we know that our invoices are getting paid, and we can have visibility to those documents for whatever reason. If someone calls us up and says, hey, we want to make sure we got paid, in a couple clicks, we have that record in front of us. Okay. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Perry Lynn, and she's going to finish off the presentation for you.
Oh, thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. Oh my gosh, that was really powerful, and I hope everyone was really able to see the big benefits there. And in my mind, it's about having that really full configurable approval flow where you have complete visibility and control of where those invoices are at any point in the cycle, and then be able to retrieve them if you need to. We also wanted to touch on just the delegation of a workflow. So how about if someone goes on vacation? You don't want their invoices piling up on the desk, right? So now you would have the ability of assigning their work to someone else. Okay, so let's kind of take a little bit of a transition now, and I want to move into extending DocLink across the enterprise. So it's really important to know that absolutely one of the fundamental aspects of our solution is being able to solve everything related to accounts payable and payments, right? But you can also take DocLink to other areas in the company. So let's just go through the next couple circles. So you have the ability to capture documents related to human resources or HR. Legal, what about documents for legal, right? Full text search is probably going to be more meaningful for them. What about that whole, quote to check process, right? Capturing quotes, capturing customer POs, relating all documents together based on the manufacturing or distribution process, and having those easily accessible. What about documents for marketing, right? Or customer service? All departments in the enterprise can use document management. You get to decide where you're going to start first. Okay? Now, I want to also start highlighting for you a couple different areas where hopefully you've gotten a flavor of what some of the possibilities are, but let's kind of take it to the next level as well. So we've already talked about different departments. Let's talk about different processes. Right? And I want to start with purchase requisitions, and then we're going to go into our Smart Form Toolkit area, and we can also talk about using this toolkit for a miscellaneous check request or an expense report or credit card processing, right? Anywhere where you are using Excel or paper-based forms today. So let's take a look at Smart Form Toolkit, and I'll introduce you to what it is and how it can help your organization. Right, so what is it? It's really a toolkit that allows for you to either create a document or, while you're actually in workflow, view and index other documents. So that's really important as we start getting into more complex business processes. I think it's easy to think of Smart Form Toolkit in the way that it can help with particular kinds of documents. So let's take a look at what documents they can help facilitate. So here are my questions for you. This will help you decide whether or not the Smart Form Toolkit is something that you should be looking at in your organization. If right now today you are getting a credit card statement from the bank, right, you are getting that manually, you are maybe chopping that up by card holder and manually distributing that statement out to the card holders and asking for them to attach receipts and write on that form and send it back, you can use DocLink and Smart Form Toolkit. If you are struggling in your HR onboarding process and you want to think about a new and unique way of bringing on board new employees and facilitating all the documentation surrounding that, that's another possibility. Expense reports. This is actually our #1 use case in DocLink and Smart Form Toolkit, are companies wanting to streamline that entire process. From the moment you take a picture of a receipt on a mobile device, give that document some meaning, and then pull it into the expense report. And I'll show you that in a moment as well. So hopefully, can you see the other examples here? A check request, a requisition, an AP check review. All of these are possibilities of using the Smart Form Toolkit to transform your organization. So Mark, let's take a look at the next slide and the next couple slides. And I just wanted to give you a quick picture and an idea of what it looks like. So here we have an example of an expense report, very similar to what Mark has already shown in the demonstration. It's broken down into 3 basic areas. The header portion where you're seeing the blue area, that's the summary information about it. Then we go into the details. In this particular case, this information has come into the application from what we indexed in mobile, and then we can expand on those document fields here as well. The next step to this would be actually then creating this document and sending it through the workflow. There we are with workflow again, right, to get the necessary approvals and then to voucher that into Sage. Right? Let's take a look at the next example. So this is what I'm hoping this is doing for you is just giving you enough examples so it can kind of get those creative thought processes going and helping you start ask yourselves, what are the documents that you're plagued with internally? Here's one for HR onboarding. So you see that we're using a toolkit for a slightly different flavor, where in this case, we're kind of using that summary information as checkboxes to determine if we've done all the necessary things to bring on this new employee. And the benefit here is that you see in the body, we have all the documents that relate to this particular employee. So if you're thinking about streamlining HR and trying to have easier access to documents versus filing cabinets, let us know because this is an area that we can help. Let's look at the last example. In this case, we're looking at a purchase requisition, right? So if your organization is looking at trying to apply some controls to your purchasing function, then we can use the Smart Form Toolkit as a way of doing a purchase requisition, right? Where the employee can come in here, request the items that they want to purchase, and there again, we're going to use the power of workflow to get the necessary approvals. Now here we can take it many, many different steps further. Maybe you want to then have this transformed into a purchase order and send that out to the vendor. All of those things are possible. Here's another element where if any of the things that we've been talking about are resonating with you, let's just set up a call where we can have a conversation and talk about what you're doing today, kind of where your impressions of those paper-based bottlenecks are, and then how we can use the software to really help transform your business. All right, let's take a look at that last slide. And this is really just kind of a summary of the overall benefits of the Smart Form Toolkit. And you see them across there. It's really about having one tool that can manage all things document related, whether it's a document that is generated internal of the organization or external of the organization and coming in. And then being able to, via security, view documents that different employees might have right to view. Okay, so let's take the next slide, if you don't mind. Perfect. We have talked about a full enterprise-wide solution. So this is one of the final slides in our presentation today, but I thought it would be important to not only say, yes, we are all things AP, but we are also all things for all departments that are, document intensive. So let us know, which of these areas are most important to you, or if, of course, it's accounts payable, and we can certainly help with these different areas. So why DocLink? I'm deeply passionate about the application and really helping companies solve business issues to take their business to the next level. And I think about it just simply in this way, that you can capture not only documents that are generated from Sage, but everything that's external as well in one central place, right? All tightly secured, so you can control who has access to what documents. That you've got the power of using DocLink workflow to route invoices or other documents through a very controlled workflow environment and allow for them to code invoices and then repurpose that data into Sage, which of course is saving on data entry. But ultimately, it's about fulfilling your paperless vision. So again, I would love to have an opportunity to meet with you and really talk about what's happening in the organization, where the paper-based bottlenecks are, and how we can help you solve those, to really take your company to a full-on paperless company. All right, So I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mark, that brings us to the end of our presentation. So I think at this point, Mike, I would love to maybe pass it over to you for
Sure.
some closing comments.
Sure. So I just want to say thank you, Peregrine and Mark, for obviously sharing the benefits of DocLink and going into such a detail, and thanks to all the attendees for joining us. Before we kind of jump into the Q&A section, if you have any questions, you can please email your CAM, for which I am one, and or our team. Our email address is camteam@swktech.com. And we are ready to jump into the questions there.
All right.
We have a couple ones. We have a lot of questions about DocLink and how it kind of works. So apparently maybe we'll take a couple of these here. Does DocLink work with custom document types?
Yes, it can. It can work with all document types.
The second piece, we had some questions regarding OCR. Maybe do you want to talk about how DocLink works with OCR?
Absolutely. So OCR is another capture methodology. So we have the ability to leverage OCR. OCR, the benefit is to capture the image and extract data or interrogate data, and then repurpose that throughout the organization. So if you have a high volume of invoices, that is absolutely something that we can consider for you. It's all about reducing data entry.
Sure. So we have a couple other questions. It sounds like maybe this client might have eRequester. I want to know how DocLink could be a little bit different from a solution like eRequester or maybe some of the other tools out there.
It's a full enterprise-wide solution. So not only can it take care of the full requisition process in creating a requisition, getting the approval for that requisition, converting that into a purchase order, sending it out to the vendor, but it can also handle the entire invoice process, payment process, and of course you can take DocLink to anywhere in the organization for a paperless solution. So that's the big difference. You don't have to have multiple solutions. You would only need one.
Great. We only have 2 more questions here. Does DocLink match purchase orders to an invoice?
Yes, it can. Absolutely. We would use OCR potentially, or we could do a 3-way visual match using the power of workflow.
Great. And we have a couple questions that revolve, I should say, around pricing. Maybe if we talk about how it is priced, maybe not the exact prices, but if you want each individual component, how does that work? Are they purchased separately, together?
You got it. So we have a couple different solutions, especially for the Sage 100 customer base. So we have a solution called Paperless Plus, and it hinges on Paperless Office in that it gives you the full capabilities of workflow, coding, approvals, email alerts, integration with Sage, payment capture, etc. But it's at a very, very aggressive price point. In addition, you can extend that to kind of our full license, which is really more about how many users that you require, and are there any complexities or rules that we need to talk about. So in order to get a quote, what I would love to do is we'd need to have a chat so I can understand what you're trying to achieve, what are the processes, how many users, and then it would be really simple to get a quote. So if you're curious, reach out to your SWK rep and say, hey, listen, I might be interested in looking at DocLink. Can you give us an estimated quote? And we'll want to set up what's called a discovery call. It can be 30 minutes just to gather some preliminary information, and then I think we could get a quote out to you.
Great. So I think that's all the questions we have today.
Perfect.
Obviously, Perry Lynn, Mark, and I would like to thank everyone for attending. You can look out for next week's webinar, which will be on August 23rd. It's titled Manage Your Full Fixed Assets Lifecycle. It revolves around Sage Fixed Assets. Obviously, SWK will send that information out shortly. We hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, Mike.